Welcome to Command Shift Left, the podcast that helps you navigate the treacherous waters of the software development, ops, and security world while also diving into the hot current trends in the industry. Join myself, developer Philip, our co-host or Vice.
Hey audience!
As we battle through hilarious real-world stories, pro tips and hacks for navigating your way around developer security, learning about our Shift Left life, and life stories that have saved our ass. Now it's with all pleasure, we have two amazing guests with us today, Jesse and Islam. Please go ahead and introduce yourself. Let's start with Jesse.
Yes, Jesse, you might know me from YouTube as CodeStacker or on other socials.
Awesome.
I'm also a senior developer advocate at MongoDB.
And Islam?
Hello, I'm Coder1 on YouTube and a full stack developer at TopTail as well, and love sharing content.
Awesome. We got some great co-guests on the show today.
That's very true. And without any further ado, and in no particular order, let's start with our first fact, and I believe that's yours.
Thank you. So my first fact for this episode is that shibboleth or shibboleth is one of the oldest uses of passwordless authentication. So for those of you who don't know the biblical story, during a internal tribal war between the tribes of Israel, between the tribe of Ephraim and the tribe of the Gileadites, the Gileadites were trying to find Ephraimites and kill them off as they were trying to scurry back into their own area. They were on the banks of the Jordan River, and they would stop people and trying to figure if they're part of their tribe or not. And they leveraged the fact that the Ephraimites had a lisp. So they asked everyone passing by to say shibboleth. And if they say shibboleth, instead, they'd kill them on the spot. And so that's we're talking like Iron Age technology, but still it worked. And passwordless today is all the rage. Everyone is talking about passwordless. Everyone doing authentication, which is very different from authorization. So authentication is verifying your identity. Authorization is dealing with enforcing what you're allowed to do or not. So authentication is going through the passwordless revolution today, and everyone's trying to add biometrics and add other kind of mechanics and security keys and one-time tokens and all these things. So you won't have to use passwords, but they've already solved this in biblical times.
I'm so glad we moved on, because knowing how many times I butcher my password, I wouldn't want to be killed on the spot.
Yeah. Think about it. If every time you fail a login, if someone just jumps up the back and stabs you. And maybe to add a little more color to this, when we're thinking about authentication or ways that we can authenticate someone's identity, there are three different modes. So there's something you have, like a password or a secret key or an object that, like an actual key that opens a vault, for example. Something so actually password would fit there better, or any other secrets, like how you should knock on the door, that would be something and something else is something that you are. And actually, when you think about the shibboleth, it's actually something that you are. That lisp is a inherent trait that those people have, so that they don't even control that. And I'm kind of actually excited about seeing where more things like biometrics and more kind of using AI to actually understand who you are, to actually verify your identity. I think it would be both crucial as complexity continues to arise, and also very exciting. And when you think about it, it's actually more something that you are than something that you have, compared to, for example, your fingerprint. Like someone can cut off your finger and use it. And so maybe the fingers are actually something that you have, not something that you are. Any thoughts on that?
that was a lot. That was a lot to take in. I'm still processing, because you took me all the way back to like the Bible.
Yeah, I was just kind of curious, because we're talking about here, passwordless authentication. So at this point, we're trying to find new ways of doing this. And considering Jesse is at MongoDB, I mean, do you kind of implement any sort of security features that where a user has to authenticate before they do anything, or pushes or consumes any data?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you have to verify, first of all, your IP address, and then you would have a username and password. But there are other ways of authenticating as well. You can use Google login, different types of like JWT tokens. So yeah, there's also always different types of authentication. But like you said, how can we make things easier possibly? But because I don't remember passwords, I have a password manager for that. If I had to remember my passwords, I would not be able to log into anything.
The problem with passwords, by the way, is twofold. One is just managing them and remembering them, and the other one is getting people to actually use good passwords. Like if your password is your birthday or just like the word password and the number, that's not gonna hold up for long.
Right.
And people always have this tension between having a password that will be easy for me to use and having a password that will be hard to guess. There's a post from XKCD, a comic from XKCD, where he encourages people to just build sentences instead of just coming up with mnemonics or just random words. So something like, the blue horse ate my sandwich is something that is both hard to guess and is a long password, and is something that is rather easy to remember because it's a sentence. Though I already forgot what I said. Something with a horse and sandwich, I don't know. So, but maybe in general, we should get rid of passwords.
Yeah.
Yeah, those two. Or use a template of a password for everything. Like, it's the same thing, you just add another number or the name of the service. Those are really bad.
I'm actually still surprised because, when Face ID in mobile phones started to come out, or like fingerprint ID in mobile phones, that really kind of made it easier for us to manage everything, because I cannot, for the sake of me, remember all my passwords. And I think if I, like you, Jesse, and probably everyone on this call, if we didn't have a password manager or some way to kind of store everything, it would be the end of us, because I just wouldn't be able to log into anything. But I'm surprised they haven't released it in other devices, like our computers. Like, why can't I just log in with my face if I have a camera looking at me all the time? I mean, it's some features that are really missing that could definitely make it better, but maybe there is a reason for it.
So there is a reason. The reason is that...
Well, I think you can do that on Windows.
You can do it now on the web. So there's a standard called WebAuthn that literally provides higher level applications the ability to access those devices, access both the secure storage as part of the CPU, access the a password manager, access biometric scanners, access the camera to do so, but it hasn't been widely adopted. So the passwordless revolution today is a lot of these companies that are now saying, oh, stop using the old login, stop using the classic Auth0, for example, use our shtick for login that has biometrics built in. So there's a lot of companies like that, but it's still in early days, so it's not very commonplace. But that will probably change in the next 2 years. And I'm also kind of excited about those changes also propagating into authorization, not just authentication. So maybe we should only let you log in if you're willing to share your face. And maybe we should only allow you to do an action if we have double factors that we know that, oh, it's really you and you're at your home for it. Or you're at the bank where we can verify that. For example, to do a transaction, something like that.
And then there's the other side of the coin where people don't want that data to be collected, and so it has to be stored somewhere. Your biometric fingerprint of some sort has to be stored somewhere, and then that's on the internet forever. And people are thinking ahead of, okay, that when this company gets hacked and my biometrics get leaked, then someone can get into everything. And so how do you mitigate that as well?
So part of the standard is actually, they don't actually store your fingerprint. They store a hash or a signature on your fingerprint. So while there are some cases that that can be reverse engineered, or kind of you can maybe decode enough information from that to kind of restore your fingerprint, in most cases, it won't be an issue. You probably need multiple instances of your fingerprint hashed on different solutions.
Yeah.
Also, and if they salt that information, in general, just also with passwords, that's maybe a good lesson to add here. If for some reason some engineer listening to us is building password management on their own, so one, never store the password itself, plain text as part of your database. Very bad idea. Don't do that. And secondly, it's not just enough to encrypt it. You should encrypt it with a salt. A salt is another small string that you concat to your to the password, and then you hash it. That way, even if someone has hashes of the same password from various sources, they won't be able to restore the original password. And I imagine, I haven't actually dug deep into this, but I imagine something similar is being done with the hashes on the biometric elements themselves.
Yeah, so I think it's a matter of education as far as, the audience here, developers, can clearly understand that. But when you talk about the general public and they're thinking, they're storing my fingerprints and they're storing, but it's a matter of educating everyone that, this is secure and you can start using it because, things change so rapidly and trying to keep the general public up to speed on how it actually works. That's the hard part. And that's kind of part of what I do as a developer advocate is kind of educating and letting them know, like, this is new technology and it really does work, but getting the adoption for that new technology is sometimes hard.
That's true. And I think, go for it.
I was just going to say exactly what you're going to say.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I am going to say that on that note, I think it's the perfect time to move on to the second fact, which I believe is Jesse. So take it away.
Yeah. Cool. So my fact is that the average attention span is now only 8 seconds for humans.
That's horrible.
And that is less than the attention span of a goldfish.
I kind of lost you there. My thought just drifted.
I know. I spoke for longer than 8 seconds. I'm sorry. So, I mean, I blame all of the short form content for this. Like, so many people are consuming all of the short form content, such as TikTok. But it's everywhere. It's not just TikTok. And so as a content creator, I have difficulty with that because I like creating long videos and I like teaching people. And, when people stop watching these long videos and they would rather these short videos, it's hard. And so that kind of brings me into AI and like ChatGPT and whole conversation of, is ChatGPT going to take your job and whatnot? And I don't think that's the case at all. But I think that it's definitely going to help us. And it's actually helped me to learn things more concisely. So when you want to learn something, you ask ChatGPT, teach me this in 100 words or less. And it does it. Your attention span is much shorter. It gives you the gist of it. And if you want to dig in deeper, you can ask it more things.
So you think that AI will become, so our attention spans, those are lost. We're not getting those back. So you're thinking that AI would be a bridging component, like for all these humans that want to consume the content, AI will chew it for them and spit it into their mouth like a mama bird. So that's the idea?
I think it's a good use case.
That's cool. That's actually really interesting. I think
it's scary though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think as content creators, and there's 3 on this call, which is quite interesting. I think we've all felt it, and I mean, I saw some incredible ways that they're using AI to improve things. It's very interesting that you mentioned summarizing content, because usually we would film really long tutorials on how to do things. And it's not like you can present it in 8 seconds. It's really complex stuff that's just sometimes it just requires time to even just say what it is, then even just go ahead and explain it. So I mean, for example, I saw very recently that Stripe is now using GPT in their documentation. Now, what they're using is they're extracting certain keywords from a block of different parts of the documentation, and they're summarizing it, probably in 100 words or less, right? So someone can go to the documentation without reading, 2,000 words. They'll just get 100 words TLDR, where they're suddenly going to understand it. But then I'm not sure how far and how effective this can get, but it's definitely something that's happening, and we can see it happening right now.
It's happening, and it is very effective, and that's why it's being added. But it is definitely effective because people are looking for answers, and sometimes they don't find the answers in the docs because they have to read so much in order to find that answer. And they'll revert to Google where they might not find the correct answer. They might find an old answer. And so training ChatGPT on your specific company's documentation and having it answer that question in a concise way, but then linking to the actual docs after that so that they can go ahead and read the full document if they want.
That also kind of sounds like the new version of SEO. Like you try and get ChatGPT, like if everyone's using ChatGPT or derivatives of it, you wanted those to be as trained as well as possible on your content. So it will suggest it or something close to it, or at least the alignment or direction that you have with your content when it spits out things. And I'm kind of waiting for like what are the hacks or what are the methods to actually make sure that ChatGPT learns what you want it to learn. Currently, we're still stuck with like, oh, I'm back in 2021, so pardon me if I don't know anything about what you're asking.
Yeah, so that's actually a built-in feature. It's called embeddings. So in ChatGPT, you can actually tell it only reference this set of documents, and you have to store the documents in a vector store. And you store the documents there, and ChatGPT will only reference that as its source of truth, and it will answer from that.
Awesome. I also want to ask you, as you both, basically everyone here besides me, are YouTube creators. So you talked about short form content that is now maybe because of TikTok is becoming very prominent. How do you feel with the combination of the short attention span but also the platforms kind of enabling you or even encouraging you to create more short form content?
I was super hesitant at first. I was like, no, I'm not going to dance on a video and teach this.
I kind of wish you did in some way or another.
That would be funny, right? But I think people are consuming it so much that you kind of have to either jump on the bandwagon or get left behind. It's the same thing with technology. You kind of got to keep up with technology and just go with what's popular.
Unfortunately, yeah. But I know, for example, you, Islam, you create long form content, right? There's a lot of tutorials that you bring out. So have you tried to some way salvage this attention span, or are you just continuing to push forward with what you have?
I tried like a one short, I believe, and it did horrible. But I mean, I always plan to have.
Give it some time.
I did. It had like a 1K for like the past 6 months or something. So I'm not a big fan of TikTok, to be honest. But yeah.
And what is your take on dancing?
Oh yeah, I'm far away from that. Yeah,
I can kind of imagine like dancing videos that include like typing code. Like the dance itself is how you type like a command line in Kubernetes, or how you use an SDK. I can see that work. I'd watch that.
Or are we just all collaborate and we talk about all the different exceptions you can get in code, the error codes, and we just try and figure them with body movements.
Yeah.
So if anyone's up for it.
Next big thing. Jesse, I think you wanted to say something before I interrupted.
At first, I thought it was hard to create the short content as well, but it's really just like I tackle it the same way as a long form video, but I batch them, and so I'll record 12 shorts in 2 hours, and I'll schedule them out. And so I'll do that one day a month, and that's my month's worth of shorts, and they're just scheduled.
You can see the engineer coming into the problem space, right? Yeah, content creation. I'll solve this with threading and asking Q that will gradually spit out tasks.
Yes.
I love it.
Kudos to you. And I think this is a great time that we move on to our first fact. So
to our third fact.
I said first fact. That was a list. Yeah. I'm sorry. Do I get they cut out now? I'm sorry.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
Where's my knife?
Please forgive me. On to you, Islam.
Okay, so React got rejected by so many developers first when it was announced on the first conference ever, like 9 years ago. And they the take on wasn't that like, oh, GSX looks horrible. Nobody's going to use HTML instead of JavaScript in a combination with CSS and all of that. But here we are. React is right now the most used UI library in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah. I think I remember seeing a fact about that. 41% of developers are actually using React, which seems quite crazy because that's a lot of developers. I think there's like 26 million in the world.
Whoa.
So that's a lot of million React.js developers.
I make more like videos for us to make for React. So yeah. That's, yeah.
Yeah. I remember back in 2012 when basically React was starting out and I gave it a first try. I remember, first of all, that I actually loved it much better than Angular. I was kind of an Angular guy at that point. And I said, yeah, it's so stupid to have your HTML inside your code. Of course you want your code inside your HTML. That makes a lot more sense. So I actually thought there was a point for React at the time. But something that I think kind of slowed React and maybe also kind of created friction with those initial reactions was the license they used. So they originally used this kind of weird license that you can use this, but like you don't actually have the full license. And they can potentially at any time, Facebook can come and say, actually, no, that you can't use this and stop using it in your software. So I think that really slowed down React initially until they fixed that.
Oh, that's actually, yeah.
I don't remember that.
And nowadays you think it's crazy, but at the time when web frameworks like Angular was still new and Google was very dominant in it, it was like React, jQuery, and garbage, all kind of Microsoft, sorry, Bill Gates or whoever, a lot of Microsoft garbage and ASP that, like, if you show it to me today, I'll still have nightmares, I think.
It makes sense. I mean, they didn't have traction at first, and they didn't want somebody to steal the code, so they had to protect it. Well, my take on React is it's amazing. I love React, but it's just so hard to keep up with. Things are changing so quickly, especially like Next.js. I love working with Next.js, and how do you keep up with all this? It's great stuff, but just how do you keep up with it all?
What I try to do is I try to follow influencers like you guys that keep tabs for me, and I try to listen to podcasts that share interesting facts that will educate me on this. And I try to say all kinds of meta and recursive things.
There you go. That's a novel idea.
We'll come out of this podcast feeling more under pressure than we did.
Especially with ChatGPT and the Ephraimites coming after you, and if you put any content wrong, that's it. You're dead.
You're done.
Yeah, I think like it's really, as you say, it's really hard to keep tabs, especially with all the changes that are not just in React itself, but as they propagate to all the different frameworks. So you need to pick the right framework for yourself, and then you need to keep tabs on it. And also when you pick a framework, there's all the plugins. What really drives me crazy in the web development world today is that every little damn thing is a library. Like there's the class X, like even just breaking down the class names to be added to the component. That's a library, and you have to use it, right? Or you should use it. I don't know. Yeah.
Instead of 2 lines of code, you import a library.
And yet you need to keep tabs. Oh, it stopped working. Why? Oh, of course. Now there's class X5, which uses the new Rabbit or something. I don't know. Is there like a specific... So you mentioned Next.js. Are there other frameworks or tools or solutions that you're excited about in the kind of web dev or React space?
Yes. I think it's very interesting that the new React docs no longer support or recommend, not support. They no longer recommend
I didn't know that actually.
To start a React application. Yes. Their number one recommendation.
Oh, that's interesting.
Wow. Wow.
So Create Next App is now recommended. They also recommend Gatsby and Remix. Also Vite is a good solution, but at the very top, Next.js is what they recommend to start with.
Wow, I'm just thinking about all the pressure from Vercel and from Netlify. So maybe Netlify bought Gatsby just for that, so they'll stay on par.
Who knows? It could have been an on-purpose thing.
As I saw the last conference about Next.js, I think both of the React teams and Next.js teams are just working closely to bring like features like server components and stuff to the market. I think that's really promising for both for us as developers, and especially Next.js lovers like us. I think that will just make Next.js the top of the list whenever you try to create your next startup or something. So.
Yeah, I'm really interested in how it's going to evolve, because I know one of the selling points for me when I started using Next.js the first time was that it allowed you to load server-side content before the page actually rendered. And I think that was a huge win, because it was in some way that suddenly we didn't necessarily have to base all our work on having a server hosted. We could have just done some things rendering the website, which was, performance-wise, it was super cool, but just it gave a lot of capabilities to developers. So, if they're working together now, I'm curious what they're going to come up with. But then again, how do we follow along?
You follow all of the influencers, obviously.
Well, so everyone follow Jesse and Ichlem and make sure to pressure them into making more videos.
When you try a new thing, like when you're starting a new project or you're trying a new library, what's your go-to? Is there like a common demo app that you use? Is there a common create app that you use?
Yeah, I think for like every video, I try to create a different app than the previous one, or at least just evolve the app. And right now I use ChatGPT because before it was taking me so long to create the app I want. And now I just tell ChatGPT, oh, I want this React demo, and I use Tailwind with that. Can you please separate this into custom components? And it creates for me the components that are going to be used like a building blocks for the idea I want to show. For example, my next video I'm working on right now is just like error handling in React. So I literally spend the night just instructing GPT, and I'd like to create me a bunch of components to...
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's actually a great idea, and it works for me really well, especially GPT-4. So I bought the script subscription the first day it came out. I really love it. And yeah, I think the audience, like I'm talking about my audience specifically, like the diversity and different, instead of like using the same example over and over, like for example, the counter app that we see everywhere on YouTube.
Right.
I think that becomes a little bit like, like, oh, I watched that video, even though you've never been there.
And do you find yourself having to edit a lot of the code, or does it like give you any errors, or is it just literally copy and paste and it works?
Yeah, like 90% of the times it's copy paste. It does really well with Tailwind.
So that's impressive.
Yeah, I really like it. Then I have to figure out the state logic, and sometimes some unexpected errors. Sometimes it misspells, like when you in a long context, it doesn't remember exactly the context. I think it helps a lot. Like instead of takes me like 6-8 hours sitting there writing code, it takes me now like 3 hours. So
wow, percentage-wise, that's crazy. So we're literally seeing like the change in the workflow manifests in what you do in a significant way. But though I'm kind of wondering. So we're already seeing this change. Like I wonder, like when is the next step when you tell it, instead of writing code for your video, you're just describing the video. Make a video of me doing this demo code, showing this framework, and it just spits that out.
Consume this documentation and create 10 videos on each.
That would be
main
fantastic and scary at the same time.
Especially when you keep in mind that you're creating that content through that, and it's being consumed by another AI on the other side, because we already talked about there's too much to digest, and we don't have the attention span. So we're using AI to generate content for AI. Welcome to the dystopia.
Yeah. So and then we have the deep fakes, right? So the AI could make a video that looks like me, that sounds like me, based on the documentation, and I never even looked at a camera.
By the way, what you're hearing now, it's all generated by AI. I'm actually outside begging for money because I lost my job to an AI. I think this is actually a great point to move to our fourth and last fact for this episode, and I think that fact is yours, Philip.
All right, I'll take it away. So my fact for today's episode is that every time you saw Apple do an advert, whenever they show a device on screen, it always has 9:41 a.m. as the time on the device. And that's actually no coincidence. And for all the non-believers, you can actually go on the Apple website right now and check it for yourself, and you'll see it. Now, like I said, this is not a coincidence. So they do it purposely, and it's, I guess, some way part of marketing and some way part of just sticking to a trend that turned out to be a coincidence. And I'll explain. So previously, when Steve Jobs was still alive and he was presenting the first iPhone, they've decided that as he unveils the new device to everyone, it's going to be 9:42 a.m. And they rendered previously the new iPhone as a 9:42 a.m. And they stuck with that trend since then. But now there was a change recently where they released the iPad and they changed it to 9:41. And now with every single Apple event, they usually release and showcase a new device 40 minutes past the hour. So whenever they actually show anything on screen to the live audience, if they look at their watch, it actually makes sense, and it really makes them feel like everything is live.
Wow.
And then obviously since that trend started to continue, they started to just adopt this as just the standard way of rendering any of their kind of visuals.
So on the next live announcement, I can just wait 40 minutes and just go right at 9:41 and see what it is.
Yes, pretty much. Pretty much, that's it.
Nice.
So if you're impatient and you just want to get straight to the product release, that's what you do, and that's the secret behind it.
I'm kind of surprised because that takes a lot of showmanship. Like when you have an event and you have like thousands of people coming in physically, and you have everyone watching, like millions watching online, a lot of things could go wrong in that process. So and you were like talking, it's not like showing an hour. It's like a specific minute. So you really need to hit that mark to have that impact. Well, maybe it's not that critical, but if they're sticking to it so much, it's I don't know. It's probably putting a lot of pressure on everyone there just for that gimmick that most people that don't listen to this podcast don't know about.
Yeah, which kind of really impressed me at first, because the first time they did it, they agreed on it. And they didn't know if it's going to happen or not. And I read an article about this.
Yeah.
But actually, Steve Jobs hit the minute exactly precisely as it popped up. So as 9:42 hit,
what a champ!
Yeah, I know. And then they showed it, so it was perfect. And since that, I guess they're keeping it as like a trophy win or something with all the other devices. But another thing I can actually tell you, which is quite interesting. I don't know if you guys recall, there was this whole marketing thing done by Apple, which was like titled "Get a Mac." It was a series of these videos where they compared Windows and Mac, and it was kind of like a parody trying to showcase that Apple is better. And that Apple does things differently and it's much more performant. Yeah, and that kind of campaign got millions of views, and it was a way of doing creative marketing. And since then, kind of companies, and specifically tech companies, started to adopt the way they do creative marketing. So, for example, one that I find quite interesting is what Docker did. So once Docker actually starts to become a fairly, famous company, and they start to develop their containerization platform, they obviously had a great adoption. But at one point, they became enterprise, and they wanted to release something called Docker Dash, which was like the enterprise dashboard for managing all the containers. Now, they wanted to keep, and they didn't want to alienize any of their new users. So they used a strategy of marketing to essentially make sure that everyone is involved, everyone will understand the process that's going to take place and change as it happens. So when they hosted their DockerCon, I believe it was in 2017, they made a huge virtual game where they had 5,000 people that attended the conference in the audience, and they threw in like this whole big balloon whale, and people had to push it around. And as they pushed it around, they had cameras scanning it and showing where the balloon went. And people in the audience controlled the game and played with the game, which made actually everyone pay big attention into what's going on. And as the game was played, every time they won a level, they showcased the new features and the way it's going to transition them into the new platform and how to start using the new dashboard, which is almost an ingenious way to do it. Because not only that it made everyone who used Docker familiar with what's going on, who attended the conference, but it also gained like huge reputation. It like 3.6 million people actually posted about it. Like it was like a 96% positive adoption rate. So they really kind of nailed that marketing way of kind of really changing things around at the company to make sure that developers don't feel left out.
Amazing.
That's pretty cool. That made me think of a really cool marketing campaign from Wix, and I think it was in 2021 or 22, where they were like taking a jab at WordPress. They sent around these secret packages to a lot of influencers, and they ended up on Twitter and whatnot. And it had a QR code that took you to a commercial. And the commercial, I can't remember exactly what was in there, but it was these funny commercials. You have to look it up. And it was basically Wix taking a jab at WordPress. And it was a great marketing campaign. I can't remember exactly what happened, but it was so funny the way they went about it.
I'm still quite curious though, because it's quite a risky move to create a marketing campaign that targets the other competitor. And then it, usually that can play out quite negatively on the company. People might either start having a bad, it might lead to people having a bad reputation on the company that's doing it. So it's a risky move, but in some way, I guess it's fairly effective, right?
Well, WordPress, I'd say unfortunately, WordPress is still not dead. I think we should launch a crusade to finally put it in its grave. That's my take on it, at least. But I think in general, what you're saying, Philip, is
WordPress and PHP.
PHP, I think, thanks to Facebook and their version hack, PHP is probably will survive even a little longer. But yes, I'd kill both of them if it was up to me. We have another. This is a good point to end the reference. We have another episode where we share a fact that PHP is so bad that even its errors have errors. But if you want to know how that works, you'll have to go and listen to that episode. But yeah, I'd kill them. Not the people, the product. But to your point, Philip, I think that when something is so widespread and has so much negative feelings around it, I think it's okay to kind of diss it. Yeah, it still takes a bit of courage to stand up and actually say it. But I think it's doable. It's actually a good point to kind of to wrap up.
Thank you guys for joining us on this podcast. We really enjoyed talking to you. And
Bye,
as
everyone.
always, we'll see you in the next
Thanks
one.
for having me.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.
I think this is the perfect time to wrap up the show. If you liked this podcast, tell your friends about it. If you didn't like it, tell your enemies about it.